It is
Yeah,
completed.
all the infrastructure is completed in the subdivision. So the applicant, Nathaniel Bartlett, is requesting the CUP in order to construct the assisted living facility. Assisted living facilities are classified as nursing and residential care facilities in the zoning code. That definition is establishments that provide residential care combined with either nursing, supervisory, or other types of care as required by the residents. It's proposed to be a 16-bedroom facility for the elderly and disabled with not more than 16 residents. The caregivers will be limited to 3 during the day and 2 at night. So this is just a closer view of the property. Once again, Augustine's currently constructed with curb gutter, sidewalks, pavement on both sides of the street. You can see this is the 100-year floodplain, which is the shaded blue area for the South Fork of the Palouse River. So a substantial portion of the property is within the 100-year floodplain, so any structures that are constructed will have to meet our floodplain development requirements, which are essentially 2 feet above the base flood elevation. There's already been substantial grading for the subdivision, I believe is already elevated at the grade currently 2 feet above base flood elevation. This brings us to a zoning map of the area. It's in the residential office zoning district, as well as the properties to the west, south, and to the east. City's property there to the north is Farm Ranch. Then you have a portion within the county to the north, it's Ag Forest. And all this property here in the county to the west is also in the Ag Forest zone. Residential office in the zoning code is a moderately intensive zone, includes both offices and high-density housing, serves as a transitional zoning district between residential zoning districts and commercial and/or industrial zoning districts, appropriately applied in the following circumstances. On the perimeter of commercial or industrial districts where they butt residential land uses, where transportation network use is greater than desirable for low-density residential uses, where landforms create sites which are reasonably accessible by transportation systems and which are buffered from nearby residential areas, and where development patterns in the neighborhood will allow development of moderate intensity to occur without producing adverse visual impact or harm to the transportation network. Looking at the bulk and dimensional standards for the RO zone, so minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet. The subject property is 36,600 square feet, so certainly meets that. Setbacks in the front are 10, rear is 20, side is a minimum of 5, but both sides must equal 15. And the total building height maximum is 40 feet. So this brings us to the site plan that's been submitted by the applicant. You can see the driveway access off of Augustine Avenue. See Augustine Avenue running here. This is the building footprint for the building. So you've got the parking lot, ADA accessible parking space, and about 16 parking spaces, I believe. And then those typical 3-foot landscape buffers required to be constructed surrounding the parking area. This is the floor plan of the facility that's been submitted. 16 essentially bedroom, bathroom units. I can zoom in to the top of your screen there. So each of these is a bedroom, and then you have the bathroom, shared common hallway. This is a courtyard, so it's exterior here, but pretty much mirrored on both sides of the facility and the building. Heading to the southern portion of the screen, so the continuation of the bedrooms here on either side. You also have a media room, an office. This is the living room, dining room, kitchen, pantry. This is the main entry and a covered porch here, as well as an office, staff restroom, and laundry here to the southeast. These are the building elevations that have been submitted. So you've got the rear building elevations here, and then a right elevation as well as a front elevation off of Augustine. So staff recommends approval of the application for the CUP for the nursing and residential care facility located at 2250 Augustine Avenue with no conditions. And then in accordance with the board's decision, direct staff to prepare the relevant criteria and standards document. And I'd certainly try to answer any questions you have.
Question from the staff?
I'm good.
I do. Mike, I'm looking at the application under paragraph 7 before the Board of Adjustment may issue conditional use permit have to meet the 7 criteria. And I noted in the application, the answers to all those criteria. It says, see attached. When we get to number 7.4, 4, 5, and 6, there is not any paragraph entry in there. So I looked over and over and over again, didn't want to embarrass myself, but I still can't find the applicant's response to paragraph 7, the criteria for location is adequately served by facilities. Will it endanger public health? And number 6, meet all applicable development standards. Again, the applicant puts in see attached, but I don't see it in the.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
starts right here, the bottom of the page, following the signature page. So go to the bottom there. It says
Yes.
Criteria 7, criteria 1.
Right. And then it goes to 2, 3, and then 7.
And then 4, 5, and 6 are at the top of that page on the other side. It's not a normal numbering system, but
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, well, good, I'm glad it's in there, because I hated to think the application wasn't. Okay, any other questions from the staff? Thank you, Jerry, for
no problem.
clearing that. I read it, but I didn't see
I
it.
had to search for that too, so.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll ask the applicant then to come forward and make any comments he or she would like to make. Please identify yourself.
Nathaniel Bartlett. And, yeah, I filled out the application. I guess I can give you some background. So it's a 16-bed assisted living. We've done this before with dementia care over on Mountain View, and we've been, I guess, successful enough that there's been a lot of pressure to build a second building. So, there it is. Any other questions?
So your first project was successful?
Yeah, it did go well. It continues to go well. Memory care seems to be Moscow's big need, specifically locked units. There's hardly any in our area. So, but this one, we're decided to go with assisted living. We're going to wire it so we could do memory care if that's what we need. We can switch it. But whew, folks, it's a lot of work.
Okay.
32 dementia residents. Can need some help with that. So we'll go assisted living on this one and see how it goes, and then reevaluate, see what Moscow needs, see what the Palouse needs.
Okay. Is there any questions from the board for the applicant? I don't have any. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bartlett. Okay, we'll now take public comments. Is there anybody who would like to testify in favor of the project at this time? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone who would like to comment in opposing the project at this particular time? Okay, in that case, close the public comment period, and we'll open it up to the staff to deliberate. I'm not the staff, I'm sorry, the board. So anyone like to make some comments? Yes, go ahead, Jerry.
I'd like to say that, with the conversion of the boomers into geriatric state, we are sorely, as being a geriatric nurse myself, we are sorely lacking in the kind of facilities that Nate is proposing here. So everything in there looks great. I mean, it'd be a nice place to put your parent or your loved one, or for you to decide when you just can't do it yourself anymore.
Or when our kids decide it's time for us, right?
Yeah.
All right. Any comments or?
No, I think it's another need in our community.
I agree. Okay, is there anybody would like to make a motion?
I move to approve, direct staff to develop the relevant criteria and standards, and bring it to us at the next meeting for approval.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the conditional use permit as applied as the application so desires and direct the staff to prepare relevant criteria and standard documents without conditions. Is there any more discussion? I guess we got to do this down the line. Okay, then we'll take a vote starting from my right to left. Jerry?
Aye.
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 It's approved. Thank you very much. Okay, public hearing number 4, proposal for a variance at 403 North Polk Street, permit application LUP 2025-007, action item. The staff will brief us.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Chair, board members. Before you tonight is a public hearing. This is a variance request at 403 North Polk Street. The applicants, Lincoln and Manisha Wilson, are requesting a variance to reduce the rear yard setback for a proposed building addition on a lot located at 403 North Polk. The applicants are proposing to reduce the required 20-foot rear yard setback to 17 feet to accommodate a proposed 3,370 square foot addition. Proposed addition includes a rec room, 2-car garage, mudroom, study, dining area, storage area, bonus room above the garage, and a small increase to the kitchen area. So this is subject property highlighted in red at the center of your screen. You can see Polk Street here running north-south. This is C Street. D Street is up here to the north. Van Buren to the west. Just a closer view of the subject property. So currently a single-family dwelling, almost entirely surrounded by single-family dwellings. This is in the Fort Russell Historic District. You've got Polk Street here to the east and C Street. So it's a corner lot. It has 2 street frontages. Looking at the zoning configuration of the area, it's in the R3, which is medium-density residential zoning district. That's the green there. So really at the heart of that, almost entirely surrounded by also R3 properties. So looking at what the zoning code states about the R3 zone, it provides for an increase over the density allowed by the R2 district by permitting different types of housing construction. Appropriate where activity levels are moderate, terrain permits construction of somewhat larger structures, and where public systems and neighborhood facilities can accommodate a greater intensity of land use as guided by the comp plan. And then really just a wide range of residential uses, so single-family, two-family, twin homes, townhouses, as well as some urban agriculture, so market and community gardens, group and small child care facilities and public parks and rec facilities are also permitted within the R3 zone. Minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet for single and 7,000 square feet for two-family dwellings. The minimum lot width is 60 feet for single and 60 feet as well for two-family dwellings. Setbacks in the front are 15 feet, and that's typically measured from the back edge of the sidewalk closest to the lot if you just have local residential streets that are adjacent to your property. Same with the street side yard, so 13 feet from the back edge of the sidewalk closest to your lot. Side yard minimum is 5 feet, although both side yards have to equal 15 feet if you have 2 side yards. And then the rear is 20. So the zoning code allows property owners of undeveloped corner lots to choose which street frontage to designate as their front property line and which to designate as the street side property line for the purposes of building construction. Developed corner properties are allowed to change property line designations for setbacks so long as all setback requirements can be met. The rear property line is typically always the opposite of the designated front property line. The subject property has historically designated their front property line along Polk Street, and the rear is the property line to the west. So in order to accommodate the proposed addition, the applicants wish to declare the front property line along C Street, and the rear property line is the north property line. Existing house currently 17 feet from the north property line, which does not meet the 20-foot rear yard setback requirement. Therefore, the applicants have requested a 3-foot variance in order to designate the north property line as the rear property line. Minimum side yard, as I mentioned before, is 5 feet, and that would allow the proposed addition to be constructed 5 feet from the west property line if the variance is approved. So this is kind of the existing conditions site plan that was submitted. You can see Polk Street, C Street here. There was an addition that occurred I don't know, a few years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago you did that?
I think that was actually back in the 80s, and we just renovated it.
Oh, you renovated it.
Yeah,
Okay,
about 2
okay.
years
Got it. So you can see the proposal here. Essentially we have a site plan that shows the addition, so the garage addition as well as an addition onto the main house, and that would be attached. And so the applicant proposing, so typically you'd have the front setback off of Polk Street, the back edge of the sidewalk, and this would be the rear setback. Applicant's proposing to have the 15-foot front yard setback to come off of C Street here, and the rear yard to come off of the north property line. Although the existing building's currently 17 feet, you can see the proposed rear yard setback 17-foot line there. So that brings us to, this is the lower level of the existing house and the proposed addition. So you can see the existing, so that's the crosshatched area of the existing footprint. And then you would have the addition here, so it'd be a rather large rec room, storage, and then additional crawl space located in those areas there. The main level, see the 2-car garage. This would be a side porch, slight kitchen addition here. This would be increased dining area. There's a study here. Open deck, so this wouldn't be indoors, this would be exterior. And then this is a mudroom located here. Stairs up to, I believe, the bonus room. So that would be the second level, really just the bonus room with the stairs leading down to the 2-car garage, and then the porch coming off of that. These are the building elevations that are submitted. So this is off of Polk. This is looking at the Polk Street side of the building, currently the front. And this is off of the C Street side. This would be off of the west property line, looking east. And this would be off the north, looking south. These are some renderings that were also included. This is looking from really the corner of Polk and C Street. And this would be looking from the northwest towards the southeast. So in order to approve a variance request, the applicant has to demonstrate that special conditions and/or circumstances exist which are peculiar to the property, such as size, shape, topography, or location, which are not applicable to other properties similarly situated in the same zoning district. That's number one. 2, the applicant's demonstrated that because of the aforementioned special conditions of the property, application of the provisions of the zoning code wouldn't impose undue hardship, would deprive the property owner of rights commonly enjoyed by owners of other property similarly situated in the same zoning district under the terms of this zoning code. And then finally, the third criterion would be granting of the variance will not be in conflict with a public interest or injurious to property or persons in the vicinity of the subject property. So staff's recommendation before the board is to conduct the public hearing and upon consideration of testimony received, either approve the variance application or approve the variance application with conditions, or deny the variance application, or take other such action as deemed appropriate. And then, of course, the board shall direct staff to develop the RCS document to be reviewed and approved at an upcoming meeting. And I'd certainly be able to answer any questions you have on this one.
Yes, Jerry, go ahead.
On the slides, right before you went into the renderings and the drawings, it said, you had a thing about the, allows property owners of undeveloped corner lots to choose the street frontage. This is developed. So,
Yeah, the second point there is developed corner properties are allowed to change property line designations for setbacks so long as the setback requirements can be met. So,
okay.
you know, if you were to change and then for the front and the street side and the rear met for both of them, then you're able to change that designation.
Okay. Had 2 questions, Jerry? That
was it.
If there is, I have a question,
Go ahead,
sorry. If there is a change, like, does that require them to change the door, like the frontage of the house? Is there other addressing change requirements? I have no idea what the numbering system on that block is, but, you know, is there room in the numbering system for them
Yeah,
to?
I mean, many people have doors that are adjacent to those streets on corner lots, and so
And
there's,
so their address stays the same, so it's
yeah,
still on
unless they
both?
would like to change it.
Okay.
Correct. But yeah, there's no requirement that you have to get rid of a door, add a door. It's just for the purposes of setback requirements, so.
Okay, so you can adjust the frontage?
Yeah, there's many examples, like in Fort Russell area, of you have two doors on a corner lot, and that's actually not the main door. You have the rear door that's adjacent to another street frontage, and that's the rear yard setback. So just as long as you still meet all the setback requirements, you're able to adjust those on corner, just on corner lots.
Steve, you have a question?
Not for staff, I don't have anything, no.
I have, only question is, this is in a historic district. Does classification of a historic district come with any types of conditions, restrictions, or requirements because of the nature of the district?
Not for the Fort Russell Historic District. There's not a local historic district, which is what would impose additional requirements. Just being on the National Register of Historic Districts doesn't have any requirements
Okay.
that are restrictions.
So I'm-
It's like an honor, not an obligation, essentially.
Okay, so it's mostly by name, and it's listed as a historic, but doesn't come with a state historical's requirements or
It
something?
would have to be local, yeah.
And
in
there
order
are
to-
none.
to have restrictions on what you can't do with, additions or, demolition of structures
Yeah.
within the district.
And there are none.
We have no local
Okay.
district here, no. It's just a national district.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Any other questions for the staff? Okay, thank you. We'll listen to the applicant, if he or she would like to comment.
Need their address too, name and address.
Yeah, please state your name and address.
This has got just advances, and then that is the...
So good evening. My name's Lincoln Wilson. I'm here with my wife, Manisha Wilson. We're the owners of 403 North Polk. And I just wanted to present on our application this evening. I don't know if the board's seen the public comments that came in. We were a little bit surprised. Most of them we saw this morning when they were provided to us. But it seems that there's sort of a misunderstanding about what this variance application is about. Basically, we're seeking a 3-foot variance to make the difference between whether the garage that we want to build is an attached garage or whether it's separated by what the city requires for like a 2-foot breezeway between the garage and our home. And we provided our other plans because we thought that it was the transparent and the right thing to do, but all these other things are not things that are actually really at issue in the application. There's nothing in the, we can build this expanded living room and the expanded dining room and the rec room without any problems with the city code. The question is whether the garage can be attached or whether it's detached. There's not even a question about where it can be, but just whether it's attached or detached. So I want to just kind of go through the background of this project today and the criteria for a variance and why we think we've met them. So this is a picture up here of what we're actually looking for. We had the rendering earlier of the expanded living room, but this is the question of what actually needs to be approved for the variance. And you see the garage that's at the rear of the property, and the question is there going to be a 2-foot breezeway between the garage and the house, or is it going to be attached? So let's talk through the background of the project, and then let's talk through each of the 3 criteria for a variance. So in terms of the house itself, this is obviously a beautiful historic home in Fort Russell. Greek Revival style. These are rare in Idaho. It was built in 1902 as one of the first homes up in the neighborhood. I actually grew up across the street at 325 North Polk, so in the course of 43 years, I've moved about 200 feet. And my wife and I, when we moved to the area back in 2017, back from the East Coast, we purchased and renovated the home. And obviously, since I've grown up in this neighborhood, it was really important to me to retain the historic character of what's always been so great about it. And because of that, we won the Orchid Award from the Historic Preservation Commission here because of our work in restoring it. And we retained designers to prepare the new plans just last year in 2024. The reason for that change and for that retention was that we had some life developments, which was specifically that we had some older kids, but then we got surprised with a new baby in our fourth child who came with special needs. She has Down syndrome, and she has more medical needs than we did before, and frankly, we're older parents than we were for the first round. And when you're dealing with those harsh Moscow winters, it would be really helpful to be able to have easy access to your cars in the winter, taking the baby out to the appointments and loading up. So we wanted to build this new 2-car garage, but in the course of doing that, we wanted to make sure that what we were doing was going to be an integrated, historic, coherent master plan for any other improvements we might want over the years. And we thought, let's just plan it out all at once. And so what we submitted to the city, we really only need approval about the question of the garage being attached or detached, but we submitted the other things that we want to do in the long term in phases, so that in the interest of transparency, so that we wouldn't be pulling the wool over anyone's eyes about what we're up to. Now, there's a few challenges to this. I think Mike went over most of them in his presentation. But basically, when you look at the standard size attached garage, it's 24 by 24 if it's a 2-car garage. That means we need 44 feet of setback. And the fact is that we don't have that on the street side, the rear side, or the side. We only have it in the front, but I think it would probably be, a great offense to art and history if we put a 2-car garage on the front of this house. So we're not going to do that. If you can see here, just a quick diagram, you see this 24 by 24 square. There's no place to put it where you're not abutting against the existing house. So what could we do already? What we can do, this is what we're allowed to do right now with no variance. It's still the same expansion, it's still the same garage, it's still the same living room, it's still the same rec room, still the same expanded dining room and kitchen. The only difference is there's a 2-foot breezeway. Now, that 2-foot breezeway might not seem like a big deal, but when the whole purpose of this is so that we can easily get into our garage and bring our daughter out and not have those troubles, to have to go outside for 2 feet to go back inside to load up into the car seems like an unnecessary inconvenience. We don't think that there's a huge architectural difference either. The sort of overall impact of what's being built is roughly the same. But from an aesthetic perspective, this is what it looks like. Here's the gap between the two structures if you have that 2-foot breezeway. You have the garage being built there, and instead of things being tied together and coherent, it's disjointed. Now, we don't think that makes sense. We don't think it's convenient, but that's what the dispute is about for this variance. So what's the solution? Our designers came up with, and they worked with the city to talk about this, and Mike let us know we didn't realize that you could change the designation of which was front and rear. And Mike said, you'd be able to make this change. He said, but you come up 3 feet shy on the north side. He said, you need a variance for that. So we were asking for that 3-foot variance so we can get this built. Now, we think this is really just with the garage what it looks like. Adding just the garage, this is all we're asking. All we need for the variance is to attach it like that. We think this makes sense because it ties the garage structure into the main home in the same style. Our designers worked very hard to preserve the same neoclassical style of the main house in the garage, same roof pitch, same dormer features. And they also worked to create the 2 parallel masses of the living room expansion and the garage expansion being essentially the same size and like framing off one another. And then they're tied together through, you'll see that molding that runs across both structures from the expanded living room over to the garage, sort of making them part of a coherent whole. They look to sort of sample structures, sample designs from similar homes in the South where you see this style being more common, and said, what kind of inspiration and guidance can we take from those for how you would do a similar expansion here? So let's go through the 3 criteria for a variance and why we think one should be granted. First criteria is that there's special conditions peculiar to the property that make it suited for the variance. We think that special condition here is the uniquely large front setback of more than 60 feet, 61 feet, 10 inches. The home was built with that sort of grand walk up front, but it left little room in the back because of that. And that 60-foot setback is quite different from a lot of the other homes in the neighborhood. I just did a quick study of this. I walked around and I took photos from the sidewalk of 9 different homes that are within a 1-block radius of ours. And you can see that for each of these, the homes are, they're at 20 feet or thereabouts, sort of the limit of the setback that's normal. And they kind of loom large in the frame because they're relatively close. Ours is quite different. Ours, you see all the sky behind us because of how far setback it is on the property from everything else. There's no other single-family home in this 1-block radius that has as large a front setback as this one. And again, you look at this, and that means because of that large setback, there's not room to make this addition that there might be on other properties. The only place you can put it is in the front because that's the only place where there's space. But obviously, we don't want to do that to this home. So let's look at criteria number 2, that denial would deprive the owner of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the area. And a number of the public comments kind of went to this criteria and said, well, attached garages are not that common in Fort Russell. We decided to actually go out and study it, look at it empirically, and we think that we've shown that they are common. In fact, this is very normal. There are 40 single-family homes that are within a 1-block radius of ours, and of those 40 homes, 9 of them have attached garages, and the majority of those are 2-car garages. Not only that, but there are 4 homes that have attached garages at 5 feet from the rear setback, which is exactly what we are asking for here. And all 4 of those attached garages are on corner lots on these 4 blocks. Now, what that tells you is that if you're a corner lot in this neighborhood, that it's quite common. There's a 1 in 4 chance that you have an attached garage. We don't think there's anything out of the ordinary in allowing this. It's not if you do this, then the dominoes fall. The dominoes have been falling for a long time. This has been allowed routinely. So let's look through those examples. This home, a beautiful classic home at 328 North Polk. This was the other one I grew up across the street from. It's kitty corner from ours, and it has a very tasteful 1-car garage added on the back and attached to the home. The garage sits at the 5-foot setback line. Down the street on Howard, this is about a block away from us. This one has an attached garage at 5 feet from the property line. You can see it in this picture here. Now, the one thing to note about this, I think the owner of this house noted, actually inside, there's apparently no door that goes from this garage into the home. Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that makes a difference to whether it's considered attached. There's no breezeway, the roof is connected, everything else is seamless otherwise. It's an attached garage for purposes of the code. You also have 415 North Polk Street. This is 3 houses down from us. This is also an attached garage at 5 feet from the property line. This is a 2-car garage. It's just around the corner, and you can see it goes almost up to the rear of the property with that, and they've built a deck over the top of it. It's sort of dealing with the same slope issue that we are on our property. And 634 East B Street. This is another beautiful home in the neighborhood, wonderful garden. This one also has, just around the corner, the attached garage at 5 feet from the property line. So we think that shows pretty clearly that this is to deny us something that is routine in Fort Russell and in this particular part of Fort Russell would be depriving us of a right commonly enjoyed by others. So the last question is harm to the public or to neighbors. And this is the point where it's important to focus on what is the variance doing? Because the question isn't, does a garage harm neighbors? The question isn't, does a living room harm neighbors, or does a rec room harm neighbors? The question is, does the fact of whether it's attached or detached harm neighbors? That's what the variance is here for, is attached garage or detached garage. Now, we think that the pervasiveness of attached garages in the neighborhood shows that use is consistent with precedent. There's no aesthetic harm in it. Again, we're working with our designers to make something that's very tasteful and consistent with the other homes in this style that ties into that existing historic work. I'd love to win the Orchid Award again for this work. We don't think there's any harm to property values. We're not making a chicken farm here or anything. This is not a use change. This is going to be something that enhances the neighborhood. And a perennial problem in Fort Russell has been off-street parking. We think this is going to help alleviate that harm by at least getting our 2 cars off the street where they seem to keep getting dinged by rocks. So taking a look at the neighbors directly, if you look at the neighbors on the north side of the lot, the effect on them is the same as what already exists. They are currently at 17 feet from us, and they stay at 17 feet from us. No change to us. Now, the effect on the east side neighbor, and I think Ms. Thomas is here tonight, the question here, yes, there's going to be a garage that's built 5 feet from the property line. The question, though, is the variance. The variance is about whether it's attached or detached, because we are allowed under the code to build that garage at 5 feet from the property line if it is detached. So the question is not whether there's harm from the garage itself, but whether there's harm from the fact of attachment or detachment. And we don't think that there is, and I don't think that we've seen anything in the comments that suggests that there is. Now, there have been a number of other concerns that have been raised. Again, I opened my email this morning, and the city at this point in its submissions, I think, sent us all the comments. So we got some additional comments this morning, and I had the opportunity to review them. There's a number of concerns raised about trees, about drainage, but those are not really issues that go to this variance. They're not issues that go to whether it's attached or detached. Those are concerns that relate to, I think, building permits. And they're things that, like, we're happy to talk about and accommodate. If there's a concern about tree health, we want to obviously design and engineer this building so that it is respectful of our neighbors and respectful of those around us. We've worked with engineers when we did our renovation in 2017, and we'd work with engineers again to make sure that those issues have been addressed. But that's not an issue for the variance. That's an issue in terms of building permits to make sure that this structure is built in the right way. And the last thing I'll note is that this is not a final thing. These are not final plans for submittal. This was the general proposal that we put out there, and we put it out there to show what we're trying to accomplish. And we wanted to be transparent. I think, unfortunately, it might have been interpreted differently by others, but we wanted to show everyone what the long-term vision was and what we think we're allowed to build by right. I was hoping to give my wife a little bit of time, and I think I used all 15 minutes. I don't know if the board gives her any additional time, but
How much more time do you need?
I don't know if you want to say anything.
Yeah, I just need a minute.
Okay.
Thank you, members of the board, and to our neighbors. We read all of your comments, and we take your concerns very seriously. Again, I think as Lincoln described, we didn't need to submit all of these plans. We saw comments about kind of our aesthetics, and, in the same way that we don't, feel kind of the right to opine on, every extension somebody may do on their property. We didn't think it was necessary to share everything, but we did. Again, it was not necessary for this variance, but we wanted to be transparent and also not have to pay for a bunch of architect's drawings like every year that we go on, and if we wanted to add something on later. But right now, this garage would be a huge benefit to our family. Again, I know that all of you know now about our daughter, who I was hoping wouldn't be kind of the center of this discussion, but she has been the catalyst for needing an attached garage. I have to traverse icy stairs going down, to get to the car with her, and that could, it's only going to be, it could potentially be more difficult in the years to come. I don't think anybody else has the kind of elevation that we're at from our kitchen to our driveway, and I understand that none of this, has a bearing on any of you, but it is a huge impediment in kind of our day-to-day. So, again, I don't want to say I apologize. I'm sorry if it's like upset people or stressed people out. We understand that change is hard. We will try to be respectful and in anything that actually impacts our neighbors' properties. But for the things that are clearly within our lines, well, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Is there questions to the applicant from members of the board? No, not for the public yet, just, I'm sorry, sir. It's just, we're, just the board questions, members of the board to the applicants, and we'll open it up to public.
So I have a question on some of the drawings here that show that there's, on the north side of the property, there's quite a drop in the ground out there from along the north side of your building. Does that already exist?
Yes, and it's more sort of the northwest corner, kind of drops off down the hill. And that already exists. We think that, like, the bottom of the lot where it's at right now could be dug out, no problem, to be at current level. There's not going to be a significant overall elevation change to the site, but the site does kind of slope off down that direction where it's at right now.
It seems like some of the, well, quite a bit of the new construction is going to be quite a bit lower than the current house.
The house has
elevation.
a basement, and it would, the new construction would all be at the, like, no deeper than the existing basement. It's tough to explain without looking at it, but if you, like, walked out of the existing basement towards the edge of the site, you'd basically be walking straight out at the same level. Like, the bottom edge of our site is at the same elevation as our basement.
There's already a huge slope, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I wish I had pictures of those
I mean,
elevations,
our
but
basement is already partially elevated. It's above ground in part, so if, yeah, there's just a big slope in the back there already.
Okay.
So how many trees do you think, trees seem to be an issue with some of the comments made that were provided to us. Can you give us a little idea how many and the size? And, I mean, I understand that in the historical area there, mature trees can be significant.
yeah, so I think we have probably, I mean, someone else can beat me on it, but we probably get more leaves than anyone in Moscow. We have beautiful mature oaks in the front of the house. None of those are going down, none of those are going anywhere.
I'm specifically talking
Yeah.
about on
In the rear, yeah.
on the west side.
On the west side, there's a large maple in the back that we're actually taking down next week, but we're working with Ms. Thomas, who's here tonight. I think that tree is mutually agreed to be a tree that needs to be removed. It's been dropping branches on both of us for years, and we've talked to 3 arborists who have all told us that, like, it actually just needs to go. It's very old. Beyond that one, I think there are, Ms. Thomas, we received her letter to the board today, and I understand there's 2 other trees she's concerned about. One of them is a cedar that I think might be on our side of the property line. I'm not sure about it. We don't have plans to take it down, but I think it's on our side. And then there's a Kentucky coffee tree in her front yard that she says she's heard from an arborist that it could be threatened by this foundation work. I haven't spoken to an arborist about that, but I know that we'd be happy to work on foundation plans that would not affect that tree. I think would probably be roughly 20 feet from where the foundation would be. And again, we think that that's cross that bridge when we get there, and it's not specifically something that pertains to the variance. Because again, even if we don't get the variance, the city code still allows us to put this detached garage at that location. So we don't need the variance to put a detached garage there or to displace any of the trees. We just need the variance so it can be attached.
You've given us a lot of good photos of houses, and I appreciate the diligence you did there. But it appears to me that this new addition development of 3,300 feet is a significant size increase of the footprint of the building. It appears when I look at the aerials that it's a little bit out of proportion to the rest of the homes in the area. And again, this is, I think, important because of the public interest in the scope of this project compared to what you have right now, which appears to be a beautiful home, I might say.
I would say it's not, and for 3 reasons. First, again, Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, but this addition doesn't fall afoul of any of the city's limits on how much of the lot space we can occupy with a dwelling. That's not an issue. And also, Fort Russell has some very big, very grand homes. The home across the street, the one that I grew up in, is known as the Big House because it's an 8,000 square foot, 14-bedroom home. With this addition, maybe we're getting close to that. Tim Kincaid owns the Day Mansion at, I think 403 East A, and that's 10,000 square feet. These are large, grand homes, so we think large, grand home is not something that's inconsistent with what you see in the area.
What's the size of your home now, square feet?
It's about 5,000.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Jerry.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the garage part. The reason you're asking for a variance is because you want to change the front of the building to C Street. If you don't change the front of the building to C Street, you can build the garage without being attached.
That's correct.
Because it's within the right-of-way for the setback for the side of a house.
Let me show you what the plan
West
looks
side,
like.
yeah.
There it is. No, this is not it. This is what the plan looks like complying with the existing code. You still have the living room addition, you still have the kitchen expansion, you still have the dining room expansion, you still have the study, you still have the garage. It's just separated by a 2-foot breezeway. And that back deck there that you see, part of it is over a rec room and part of it is just deck. But that's the separation that's required. And that's what we do without the variance.
So my question is, why can you not just move the garage 2 feet over and get rid of the breezeway and attach it to the house?
I think because basically if it's a detached garage, you can be 15 or 5 feet from the property line. If it is an attached garage, you have to be 20 feet. So the instant we attach, we lose 15 feet of setback. And so that basically moves the whole thing much, much shorter. If it were just moving it 2 feet, I'd move it 2 feet, no problem.
Well, you currently have 17 feet of setback that you're asking.
That's on the north side, not on the west.
Yeah, on the north side.
And we have, right now, to get that, there's not space to get an attached garage into that corner within the setbacks that are currently allowed. If we'd have to have that breezeway in order to be able to do that.
So, I guess I think I know what a breezeway is, but it seems to be a very critical piece to this whole thing. Is the breezeway the fact that it's open air? Is that instead of closed in with a man door into the separate? I'm trying to figure out why a breezeway is so.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
So there's different setbacks between principal structures and accessory structures. So if the garage is attached to the main house, it becomes a principal structure and it has to meet the 20-foot rear yard setback requirement. If it's detached from the main house and we determine detached as more than essentially 2 or more feet from the main house, that's why the reason for the 2-foot separation, then you're able to go 5 feet from a rear property line so long as the walls don't exceed 14 feet, but the total peak of the roof could go all the way up to 35 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's everywhere throughout the city.
And you opposed a breezeway because of what reasons again?
Well, I think the whole goal of having this attached garage is to make it easy to get our daughter in and out of the house and in the car. And if it's have to carry the baby, open the back door, step outside for 2 feet, shut the door, open the next door, go inside, you're trying to make a smooth transition between the two. And I think that smooth transition, we lose a lot of that if we're detached.
I sympathize for that particular issue. It's just that it's a huge consequence because of that. That's the thing we're trying to wrestle with here.
I think, though, the question for the variance is not the consequence of the other things that we're planning to build, because these are all allowed by code. The code says we can build that garage there. The code says we can knock down the trees. The code says we can build the living room. The code says we can build the rec room. The question is, is the neighborhood harmed by the presence or absence of a 2-foot breezeway? I don't think there's been any testimony that that's the case.
I get that point. The fact is, though, that you are asking for a variance, and so therefore, we're held to look at the 3 criteria, and that's what we're going to try to work our way through here.
Absolutely, and I think that the issue is that the criteria should be directed towards the thing that the variance is changing. And the thing that the variance changes is whether we have to have a 2-foot breezeway or not. Because if we don't get the variance, everything here can still be built, but just with a 2-foot breezeway.
Yeah, well, it's quite a big, 3,300-foot addition is pretty large for, say, in a garage, and we're building a garage, and yet it's a 3,300-square-foot addition to the house. That's a pretty good-sized garage. But
No,
The garage is not 3,300
well,
square
I
feet.
realize
Yeah.
that, but that's what you're asking for, is building a garage. And we're talking, of an increased building here of 3,300 feet. Besides the garage, it's more than just a garage. And I guess I'm looking at, and I don't have a real good feel for, because the slope of the ground goes back to the basement down in the back. And then in the front, we've got a drawing here that shows that the top of the from the garage to the eave on the top of the building here, that's on top of the garage, it's an addition on top of the garage, it's 17 and a half feet up to there, and it says that the side property lines, no longer as the exterior walls do not exceed 14 feet. And this one here, from your garage all the way to the eave, is 17 and a half feet. And it says that it cannot exceed 14 feet, so you're exceeding 3 feet there to the top of the building. But when you look at the back of the house, where you have it drop down and it's all the way to the basement, you aren't even cutting or accounting for the footage from the basement all the way to where the garage is out in the front on the street. So that backyard on the west side, which is 5 feet from the neighbor's property line, is 17 feet to the eave, plus another all the way to the basement, and then the roof on top of it, which I don't know, I don't have a distance for. And so it's quite a large structure, 5 feet from the neighbor's west line.
So I'm not sure I understand all the questions there, and I would honestly appreciate Mike's guidance, but my understanding is, again, that everything we're proposing to build here can be built as of right, without a variance, where we want it to be, as indicated in this plan, with no zoning code problems, as long as we have that 2-foot breezeway. And by shifting the designation from of which side is the front of our house, then that means that we only have to get a variance for that 3 feet of setback. And that allows us to close up that 2-foot breezeway. So my point is basically that if we're already allowed to build this 3,000 square foot addition and there's no problems under the code, then this variance is not about the 3,000 square foot addition. The variance is about the one thing that we're not allowed to do. And the one thing we're not allowed to do is attach the garage. And so we're asking, let us attach the garage, because that's common in Fort Russell. As the photos show, this is something that's routine. 1 in 4 corner lots in Fort Russell, in our neighborhood, has those attached garages. That's what this variance is about, and that's what we're asking for approval for.
Other questions?
And Mike may have some insight
Yeah,
there.
Mike.
I was just going to say that, yeah, we're in the public hearing still, and we haven't asked for testimony in support or
Right,
opposition
correct.
or
No,
general
I'm just asking if
something.
there's any more questions for
Yeah.
the applicant here.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this stage, we'll open it up to public hearing, and we'll listen to comments from those people who are in favor of this project first. We ask that you limit your time to think 3 minutes is what it calls for. Please come forward and name, with your name and address if you are a proponent for this project. I see none, so for those of you who would like to testify or comment on opposition to this project, well, you can come forward at this time and limit your comments to 3 minutes, and also your name and address, please. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Caius Romans. I am a neighbor of Mr. Wilson on 517 East C Street. My concern, Davis is a very good lawyer, and I think we can. Nobody of us can argue with him because he is so good. But I feel is that he gives us a choice. He says, with my feelings, sorry that I'm, but he says, I believe is I'm going to build something really bad that I can build, so you should just allow me to build something really bad that I'm not allowed to build. That's kind of how it feels to me. So it's like, I'm going to do it anyway, so you can just as well let me do it illegally, basically. And I think that we should understand that we cannot stop someone from doing something bad if it's legal. But we can stop someone from doing something bad that is not legal. Okay? And I think that it's clear, it should be clear among us that he gives us this choice. But there is no choice. We don't have to choose between these two things. We can only do something when we have a legal right to oppose it. And we have a legal right to oppose this addition because we believe it's bad. It's bad for the neighborhood. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Next.
Hi there. I'm a little short. Can this bend?
Okay, ma'am.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm Julie Thomas, and I am the neighbor directly west of the Wilsons property. Julie, can you pull the mic down a little bit? A little more.
There you go.
How's that? Okay. I live on the property directly west of the Wilson home, and I believe my home will be directly affected by the expansion. The approving this variance will allow them to rename what's been functioning as a backyard a side yard. And this change allows for the placement of the two-car attached garage with a second story, a mudroom, a patio, and a rec room 5 feet from my property. Now, I know that can all happen from what I'm hearing anyway, but I still think it's wrong. Far from increasing my property's value, as the Wilsons claim, I think the scale and proximity of this expansion will likely do the opposite and will certainly decrease the appeal of my home. And my concerns are the light reduction that we've talked about. The addition of the garage and the second story will shade my home and yard and greatly reduce the amount of light I currently enjoy. Trees allow for filtered light, buildings do not. Drainage. My basement is very susceptible to water seepage. To date, I've only had minor issues, but I'm very concerned that the resulting increase in runoff from this expansion will lead to flooding in my basement and damage to my 112-year-old home. I'm concerned about the trees. I'm concerned about the health of my trees. I have 2 large mature trees. Again, I just bought this home in 2018. I thought the cedar was on my property, and I've been treating it as my tree. It looked like it was on my property, but that may be up for debate, I guess. But regardless, I'm concerned about the tree, and it would be impacted. I'm concerned that the close proximity of the expansion would end up harming it. And lastly, maintaining the historic integrity of the Fort Russell District is important to me. This proposed expansion will dominate the block. It is not respectful of either the history or the neighbors. The property does not have the space around it that such an expansive addition would demand. The current plan turns a beautiful historic home into an indulgent estate that does not belong in the middle of the Fort Russell Historic District. Growing up in Moscow, I remember Fort Russell as an enchanting and inviting area to enjoy as a member of the Moscow community. I was lucky enough to be able to purchase a home in what later became the Fort Russell Historic District. I did so assuming the responsibility to uphold and protect its history for the community and for the city of Moscow. I understand the desire for a garage and would welcome a conversation with the Wilsons about a more modest development to their home that would be less invasive to my property and the neighbors. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate your thoughtful consideration.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas.
Good evening. My name's Alexis Bailey, and I live at 323 North Howard. You saw my house up there, green one. I had some things written down, but I did kind of want to speak to also their presentation and argument for this. And they're saying that they have the right to call C Street, the front of their house. This is true in theory, but they don't have the rear setback unless you grant it to them. So they can't call that their rear and build in any way towards the sides or the current rear and consider that the side unless you grant them this variance. So yes, they could do a detached garage. You are allowed to do that within 5 feet of the neighboring property. However, I understand it, and Mike could fact check me here. I think the top plate of the garage can be 14 feet. So doing the entire addition on top of the garage, which is the plan, would not be allowed by this. Certainly, they could seek another variance down the line, but if you allow them to have the variance where the back, the current side, but the new rear, if you give them that variance of the 3 feet, then they can call that, that's going to be a precedence. They're going to say, well, now this is the side. So now it's the side of the house and we can build up. They would also do the enormous deck in the back that, moving towards the current rear of the home, also goes within 5 feet of the property. So the neighbor directly to the west, Julie, would have this huge home going up and back the entire length of the property. It is already one of the largest homes in the neighborhood. It's beautiful. But to more than double the footprint, which is what it seems to be doing, is really excessive, in my opinion, and it seems to be a lot of people's opinion. I don't think that they've met the burden of proving any sort of hardship. They have plenty of room on their lot to come up with a different solution. It may not be their number one choice. It may not be the one that they want, but the topography of the land does slope in the back, but they're on a corner lot. They have multiple options of where they could pull in on a driveway. And again, I think the neighborhood would very much be in support of you having an attached garage for your family and your needs. But what is being presented, the plan for the long term, is really excessive, in my opinion. Comparing to other neighbors, I can speak for our garage. I don't know when it was built or what the zoning codes were when it was, because it's always been there for me. It goes up to the property line, but then there is a whole driveway between our neighbor's house and ours. The other one on Polk that they showed, their garage that does abut to the property line from the technical rear of the house, if it's going from the front door, is only aligned with that other neighbor's garage. So it's not blocking out any light or affecting the views of that neighbor to their side. So this would be a completely different condition. And I really would hope that, clearly it's not for the neighbor's interest. We're all pretty upset about it. But I would really hope that you would take into consideration that even if it's based on a technicality that you can stop this from happening, then maybe you do it on a technicality, that we don't call that the rear and they can't have those 3 feet, because I think it would be really terrible for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Mike, can you clarify this discrepancy about the elevation of the garage, or is that something that'll come out through the building permit process?
Well, in order to not have the 20-foot setback for a detached garage and be 5 feet, up to 5 feet from the property line, the height is limited to 14 feet from grade to the top plate height, and that's measured from the front of the structure. The total height of the building can be all the way up to the maximum that's allowed in the zone, which is 35 feet. So essentially, where the walls going up to where the eaves come in, that can't exceed 14 feet. But the total height up to the peak of the roof can be 35 feet.
And does this one exceed 14 feet? And is that,
Well, yeah, I mean, the plans, it looks like it's around 17 feet, but in that circumstance, it wouldn't be detached, it'd be the side yard if the variance was to be granted. So it would be in compliance if the variance was granted for the rear setback to the north.
okay? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I just want to make sure I get my input here in this. Members of the Moscow Board of Adjustment.
Ma'am, can we have your name and address,
My
please?
name is Tina Hilding, and I live at 411 North Howard Street. We greatly enjoy living in the historic Fort Russell District, and I would like to express my concern and opposition to the proposed variance for 403 North Polk. Looking at the proposed variance, I do not believe the applicant meets the 3 criteria required for a variance. In particular, requiring special conditions and or circumstances exist which are peculiar to the property. The applicant stated that they have little room in the back of the house for an architecturally appropriate garage unless the garage is detached. I believe many people in the Fort Russell neighborhood do in fact have detached garages, including our home. There is no reason specified why a detached garage wouldn't work. I know you added to that tonight. Furthermore, a 2-car garage is a rarity if in no, well, and you found some 2-car garages in the Fort Russell area. I think a large 2-car garage would be out of place. Furthermore, it seems there is room for an addition of a small garage on the property. And then criteria number 2, that it would impose undue hardship and would deprive the property owner of rights. I do not believe that the current setbacks cause undue hardship. Many families in the neighborhood have small detached garages in keeping with the historic nature of the district. The garages are often behind homes, again in keeping with the historic area. The addition proposed is very large and includes much more space than a garage, including 1,400 square feet for a rec room and storage. The 12, as you said, you addressed that. It is not properly explained in the application how this applicant faces undue hardship and how they are deprived. Criteria 3, granting of the variance will not be in conflict with the public interest. The applicant states that the addition will be consistent with the neighborhood character. I do not believe this is the case, and I believe the size of the addition would impose significantly on neighbors. The Fort Russell is a historic district on the National Historic Register, valued for its older homes that predate automobiles. Large garages are not appropriate for the neighborhood. The neighborhood is well known for its feeling of walkability, which is largely because of its narrow streets, lack of large garages, and front porches that face the street. I believe there are many other neighborhoods in the region where large garages and large additions do work much better. In consideration of the applicant not meeting these criteria, I hope you will not support this variance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hilding. Yes, sir.
I'm Jay Johnson. I live at 405 North Howard. I'm a block away from the proposed change. First of all, I'd like to say I appreciate the efforts at transparency that you're trying to look into the future for what the entire project would do. I appreciate the city's efforts to work with you to try to accommodate your wishes, and I recognize your right to build within the city parameters that have been put down. And I'm not in the habit of disputing a neighbor's wishes, and I haven't studied the criteria. I didn't come prepared to argue on the criteria, but I think it's important for the zoning commission to consider the overall character of the neighborhood. This is a beautiful home. It's one of the largest around, and it's very historic. But that neighborhood, C Street, is one of the loveliest streets in the city. Large trees, modest homes. The biggest exception is the big house, which was previously mentioned, which is enormous, but it totally fits the character of that neighborhood. It's a beautiful home set on a large lot, well-maintained. It's also beautiful. But generally, Fort Russell, or the Polk Street, C Street area is modest homes, big trees, and I appreciate the efforts that, you're worried about the health of the trees, et cetera. But the significance of granting the variance will allow this really large project to change that corner of the neighborhood. And I realize that that can be changed anyway, but I'd rather see it to be a much more modest addition to the home in order to accommodate your family's needs, but also adjust for what you live near. I don't bear anyone any ill will, or I don't like even being here, but I do think that the addition should be much smaller than what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
See, that's J size. How's this for me? I'm Steve McGann. I live at 622 East C Street, 3 houses east of the property we've been discussing. My wife and I have been in that house for over 30 years now, so we certainly have come to appreciate the Fort Russell area, C Street in particular, and our neighborhood. I applaud the work you are proposing to do on your house. We've remodeled our house extensively. We've kept our lawns up and our gardens and all that, so I appreciate home improvements. I also appreciate the points that have been made from many of the other neighbors. It's the atmosphere of Fort Russell. It's the atmosphere of C Street. Is houses that are set back. It's houses that have kind of a small footprint with the lovely trees. You see people walking by with their kids. You see the dog walkers. You see the historic preservation folks come by. There's an essence to the Fort Russell area and the C Street in general. And I'm concerned, as many have shared with you as well, that the proposal is really out of scope without what the rest of the neighborhood looks like. Are the homeowners within the right to do certain things? They certainly are, and there's nothing I can say that they can't do that. But we have codes. I've remodeled my house, my neighbors have remodeled their house, and I think unless there's a very compelling reason to grant a variance, I think it's a mistake to do so. And from what I've heard in terms of the limitations of the site itself, the property, I don't think it negates the opportunity for a different design. Likewise, the challenge of a child, I raised 2 kids in Fort Russell with a detached garage. The majority of houses in Fort Russell are detached garages. Are there exceptions? Yes, but by far and away, the norm is a modest house with a detached garage. The hundreds and hundreds of kids that have come through have done just fine. Is it a challenge for parents? Yeah, raising kids is. But I don't know if that's a compelling reason to grant a variance to an existing code. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McGann. Other people who would like to testify? Yes, Mr. Byrd.
I have general testimony
can't-
as opposed,
You
need to get to the microphone.
but have you concluded the testimony against as opposed to general testimony?
No, this is the testimony against the project.
Okay. So is there an opportunity for general testimony on the issues before the board?
Typically, you have general testimony after. Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
Yes, there is. I'm sorry, I'm just a temporary here. Okay,
And you're doing a fine job.
yeah.
Keep it up.
That's of course what you would say.
Yeah.
In all seriousness aside, is there any other comments in opposition to the project? And we'll note for the record, it's already in the record, but we also received 3 letters in opposition that has been addressed earlier by the applicant that has knowledge of that. I don't need to read those, do I, or do I have to?
Tim,
Yes.
I would say that there are 3 letters representing 8
Oh,
voices.
yeah, that's true.
I think there's more than that. 'cause
Well,
we
Mr.
got-
Chair, yeah, we received, so typically if it's received within 5 days of the hearing, it's up to the discretion of the chair whether or not to accept those into the record. But we have received a number of those over the last course of the weekend and then
Are these
today.
the ones that were presented to the board
Yes.
members?
Tonight.
There's 3 in the packet.
Right.
That was made in time, but then there's 8 that I put on the chair's print.
Oh,
So we haven't seen those either then.
we haven't seen these. And it's up to me to whether or not we accept them because they came in after the deadline. So I'll entertain, well, we'll take care of that here. I guess we'll take care of it now. Is there any other testimony in opposition to the project?
Well, I have a question. It's about the letters. If I wrote a letter,
You'd have to,
it doesn't go into the record.
Ma'am, you go ahead and.
Come on up.
We need to get it all recorded here.
All the folks, all 4 of them watching on TV need to be able to hear you.
Oh, yeah? I'm just curious. I did
And
write a
name-
letter.
Ma'am, your name, I'm sorry.
My
name-
name's Allison Petty. I live at 419 North Howard.
Okay.
I wrote a letter, and some of us did. We want it on the record, and if it's not going to be in the record, can I just read it here, or like, can you make that decision?
No, yes, you can. You can read
Okay.
your, yeah. I
And
mean,
then
or-
it goes into the record?
Yes.
Okay. So we
That's
don't
what-
need to read your record, or read your thing. Okay, then I'll read it. Let me find it.
And you are who?
Allison Petty.
All right.
It's really small writing, so I'm going to do my best. To whom it may concern, we are writing to strongly oppose the proposed variance at 403 North Polk Street. We live at 419 North Howard, 1 street over, where we've resided since 2017. We are raising our 2 children, ages 12 and 14 here, and we specifically chose to live in the Fort Russell Historic District for its character, charm, and sense of neighborhood integrity. Regarding criteria 1, no special conditions exist to justify this variance. The lot in question is already generously sized, especially by Fort Russell standards. While the applicant's site street side setbacks is limiting, there is still sufficient space to build within existing zoning requirements. The claim of unusually large setbacks is not sufficient justification, especially when the applicants are attempting to reorient the home's front door in order to reclassify setbacks and fit an outside structure. That approach demonstrates that the plan is simply too large for the property and does not reflect a special circumstance. Regarding criteria number 2, application of the zoning code does not impose undue hardship. The claim of undue hardship is not supported by the proposed design. While we support reasonable accommodations for accessibility, this request calls for a substantial expansion, adding over 5,000 square feet, far exceeding what is needed for accessibility alone. This request is not comparable to other variances or garage additions in the area and should not be treated as such. The scale and scope of the proposed project go well beyond what similar lots and homes can reasonably support. Other families in Fort Russell, including those with children with special needs, have successfully made necessary accommodations without the need for such an extensive addition, demonstrating that the proposed expansion is not justified by the circumstances. Regarding criteria 3, the variance would be injurious to the public interest in surrounding properties. The proposed structure is grossly out of scale for the neighborhood and incongruent with the historical character of Fort Russell. It infringes on neighboring properties by pushing up against the property line, threatening mature trees,
in altering the sense of space and privacy. The impact on light, drainage, and visual cohesion will be felt across adjacent homes. Additionally, there is already a large boarding house directly across the street, which has contributed to increased parking congestion and traffic. Adding another large-scale residence on this block, particularly with a year or more of construction, will be disruptive on our narrow historic streets and would further strain the infrastructure, traffic flow, and daily livability of our community. We chose to purchase a home in Fort Russell because of its charm, community feel, and commitment to historic preservation. Projects like this fundamentally undermine what makes Fort Russell special. They signal a shift towards individual interest that outweighs collective good, and we find that deeply disappointing. A structure of this size would be far more appropriate for a large rural lot or a county lot, where setbacks, traffic, and neighborhood integrity are less of a concern. The zoning codes exist precisely to protect historic districts like this from overbuilds that disrupt the established scale and character of this area. Approving this variance would set a troubling precedent for Fort Russell and could jeopardize the future character and livability of our historic neighborhood. Thank you.
What was your name again, please?
Allison Petty.
Okay, Allison.
Thanks.
Any more? Yes, Mr. Byrd.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Board of Adjustment. I'm Kenton Byrd, 517 East B Street in Moscow. I have lived at that address for 25 and a half years, since August of 1999. So I have seen lots of comings and goings in the neighborhood. And I should note that our home has a single-car detached garage. I would like to read a letter written by my friend and neighbor Philip Mead, Associate Professor of Architecture at the University of Idaho. Professor Mead submitted his letter, but it may not have been received in time, and because he is not here this evening, I'd like to read it just so that it becomes part of the record. Mr. Mead writes, because this variance is located in one of Idaho's most distinguished historic districts, this particular Fort Russell neighborhood demonstrates a rare historical charm free of garage door dominated roads so often found in newer neighborhoods. The proposed variance would wreck the character of the existing street front aesthetic by imposing two garage doors on a cherished street front that typically has one-car garages set well away from the street front. The new double-car garage would also compromise its eastern neighbor's morning light and views to the southeast. Additionally, the building so close to this neighbor would most likely kill the existing neighbor's tree root systems and thereby kill the trees that lend additional character to the street front. The owner's two examples of neighboring variances of garages do not help his case because these examples are sensitive to their neighbors in the street front. This two-car garage addition is not for the reasons stated above. This is the most important paragraph in Mr. Mead's letter. I sympathize with the owner's need for an attached garage, but I believe a more sensitive addition can be proposed in order to preserve the beautiful character of the neighborhood. If the owner were to push the garage back 12 more feet, resulting in a setback of 32 feet from the south property line, and eliminate the west parking space of the garage, approximately 10 feet, then this would ensure the root system of the western neighbor's trees to survive. Based on the owner's reasons for the variance, I believe a one-car garage addition separated roughly 20 feet from its western neighbor is a reasonable compromise for the neighborhood and the owner. Allowing this variance to stand without compromise would also establish a troubling precedent. In my, that is his professional opinion, the preservation of this district requires a more nuanced understanding of the zoning and setback requirements designed to maintain the character and beauty of one of Moscow's finest neighborhoods. And I believe this is part of your packet of letters that were received after the deadline. But if you would like the full letter, I can provide it. Philip G. Mead, Associate Professor of Architecture.
We do have Mr. Mead's letter, but it came in, it's in the packet, it came in late.
Came in late, okay. So thank you for your time and your consideration of this request.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Other people who would like to comment and is opposed to this project? Yes, sir.
Hello. You hear me? Yeah. Chris Waynett, 511 East C Street, so across the street. I feel like it's been kind of negative as of late, so sorry about that. We don't not dislike you at all. We actually really appreciate you in the neighborhood. I just want to make sure that that gets out there. We're not here because of any bad will, okay? We want you to have a wonderful addition to your house to help you in your life. And we just don't, I guess we just don't want that one. And so, I guess we could go into reasons that are all in all the different letters, but I think that really, what it comes down to is, we want you to get what you want, but we want it to be conducive with the neighborhood, and that's it. So, thanks, guys.
Anyone else? For clarification, the letters that we got with our packet were from Jack and Brandy Sullivan, Kristen Stoops and Leon Blood, Kenton Bird, Heather Romans, Gary Saylor, and Jesus Romans, that we took into consideration as we prepared ourselves for this. The ones that came in out of the deadline was a Julie Thomas. Who spoke, well, I wanted to make sure that I just got down last names. There's also a Joshua Bailey. Didn't a Bailey speak also? Was that the? I speak. Don't worry about it. Okay. Tara Hudeberg. And I say that because if you're here, we're going to have to decide if we take these letters, but if you're here, this is an opportunity for you to say them again. Brian and Allison Petty.
She presented.
And Associate Professor Mead, okay. And Gary Reed, Marilyn and Gary Reed. And Alexis Bailey, okay. So I think there's a couple in here that did not make the deadline. This just in, another one? Oh, a free floater.
This one.
Tina Hilding.
And she spoke.
And she spoke, okay. So there are I'm kind of a stickler for making deadlines. Does the city feel like they notified the public in time for them to know that they should have got it in by a deadline? I assume so. That's standard procedure, just.
It's just posted on the public hearing notice in the fine print.
As we always do, which is standard procedure. So we have to decide if we're going to take these other letters, and if so, we're going to have to read them, I suppose. I feel like the public was notified as to what the deadlines were, and we don't particularly need to accept the ones that were not.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And you can summarize or just state general testimony about it's either in opposition or support, and then we could still include it in the record. You don't have to read it verbatim.
Okay, so.
If you would like.
Tina Hilding we heard from.
Yes.
Julie Thomas we heard from. Tara Hudeberg. Okay. Joshua Bailey. No? To whom it might concern, I am writing formally opposed to the variance request submitted by the owners. Let's see, unfortunately, the proposed variance deviates from this, well, okay, I'm going to have to read it all. I'm not good at paraphrasing. Listed as precedent property in the application and have been a part of the community since August 2019. Mr. Bailey so says. Talks about the defining quality of the character of the neighborhood. Unfortunately, the variance deviates from that spirit of the character of the neighborhood. Sufficient. He says their comparison in the garage is inaccurate. The variance appears to facilitate plans that extend beyond a basic garage. These are the different criteria. In the public interest, reorienting a home to justify this construction is misleading and undermines transparency in the process. Brian and Allison Petty spoke, okay. We've heard from Dr. Mead. And we heard from Marilyn Gary Reed.
That's me.
Did we hear from you, Gary?
No, I didn't.
Would you like to speak?
Okay. I think most of the points have been made. But
That's okay. You have your right as a citizen of Moscow to give us your input.
I don't have a copy.
You want to read it?
Sure.
Okay, just got to find it again.
Or do you need to know whether it's in opposition or support?
You tell us, Gary.
It's in opposition.
Yeah, well, I mean, go ahead and read it if you'd like. And go ahead state your name for the record and address. Bear with us, folks, but we're trying to do this right.
You can summarize as well.
I will. Okay, I'm Gary Reed. I live at 503 East C Street. Dear members of the board, our neighbors have requested a variance. If permitted, the expansion would eliminate most of the open space. The intrusion could forever curtail privacy and trigger damaging water runoff. The two-story expansion, as has been noted, is quite large for the lot and can change the character of our street. We also worry that it could lead to green lighting of similar proposals in the future, which could further erode some of the charm of Fort Russell.
Did you say green lighting?
Green lighting,
What is that?
allowing further changes in the neighborhood.
Oh, I get it, okay.
So, that's a gist. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alexis Bailey we heard from, right? Yes. Okay, thank you. That takes care of the letters.
Did you get these? Yes, she just gave me a copy.
There was more?
The floater.
The floater.
Oh, wait, no.
It's floating so well that,
No, it was actually, because it was the second page of the packet, because you said it was Smith only, and that's what it was, Kara.
Bluebird.
Woodward.
What's this one?
Terry Hudeberg, not here. And this was one of the ones that came in late. Okay, I'm writing to express my concerns about the variance. I have lived at this address for 11 years. It's a neighborhood dynamic, collegiality, ethics, particularly those related to culturing a safe and nurturing environment for everyone's children. However, based on the information, it's not clear that the applicants have little regard for the opinions on properties of the other residents in the neighborhood. I propose modifications to the current residents. I propose modification to the current residents are A, not respectful, B, are not necessary for the care of a disabled person, and most importantly, unprecedented. So I think it's worth interesting that this is a negative opposition letter. Okay. All right. Once more, then, we've read the letters, we've heard, is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to the project? I'm about to close that, and we'll open it up for general comments as I've been. Okay, was there anybody like to make general comments pro or against, or just neutral about this particular proposed request for a variance? Yes, sir. Nope.
Got to go to the mic.
Not allowed, sorry.
Got to think about those 4 people on YouTube.
Hi, my name's Brian Petty. I live at 419 North Howard Street. This is actually a question for you guys. If you want it attached, have you considered just doing a single-car garage? That way you don't have to fight the setback issue, and it can still be attached? I mean, almost all the, I would say 80% of the garages in the area are single-car.
I think, Mr. Petty, that's your point, I think, okay, and I think the applicant either already knows that or will take take that for consideration, okay?
Okay.
All right?
Fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah, the applicant can respond. He has a
Okay.
response.
Go ahead, if you'd like to respond then to Mr. Petty. Are you?
As long as the testimony in opposition or general is done, and then the applicant gets a time to
Okay.
respond
All
to
right,
that.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right. We're done with opposition, we're done for pro, but if you'd like to make comments about this project in any way, shape, or form, now's your opportunity. Yes, ma'am. No, from the, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to restate it again.
Have more comments. This is like probably one of the most awkward things that I've ever done. Spoken on stages. My name's Allison Petty, 419 North Howard.
Thank you,
And so anyway, this isn't personal at all. I want to back up what Brian is saying.
You got to direct your comments to the board, not.
Okay,
to the
well,
audience.
I want to speak to our neighbor. I mean, we all live together. We're raising kids together, you know?
I tell you what.
Protocol says you talk to us.
Okay, well, so board, we're raising our children together, and like, we hope that you guys will come up with a solution, and I don't know, like, I want to talk to them, so I'm just gonna, I'll
Okay, I
message
think
them
what you'd
later.
like to
But
do is-
yeah, like, this isn't a personal thing. We're all lovely, joyful people, and we just want to live in our neighborhood and it be great and it not be terrible.
I
That's it.
suggest you have a neighborhood picnic and talk about
We do
that.
that often, yeah.
Okay. Would anybody like to comment now from the public, neutral position about this project? Okay, at this stage, I'd like to let the applicant comment on anything he or she has heard, and that'll be it.
So some of this is Lincoln Wilson, the applicant. Some of this is responding to my neighbors, but I'm going to listen to the board, and I'm not going to look at them because I know that's not allowed. First of all, I'll thank Caius for his compliments on me being a good lawyer. He says it's a bad project, and I think the issue here is that, you know, who decides what's bad? How do you account for taste? I think that goes to something Julie and I have in common. Julie's our neighbor. We talked with her about these plans. We went through what we were proposing to do, and Julie and I share something in common where we both grew up in Fort Russell. We both moved away to New York, and we both came back. And Julie feels very different about this proposed addition than we do. Maybe it's because I grew up at the big house across the street, that I think that a very large house that's grand is perfectly in keeping with Fort Russell. And maybe Julie feels like that's something that's the opposite. But the fact is there's no standard that decides which one of us is right. What we have is the standards of the code that say there's no problem with us building something of this size, and the only problem with what we want to do is whether it's attached or detached. And since you have many attached garages within a 1-block radius, all on corner lots just like ours, 4 of them, we think it's a common thing, and we don't see a reason why we should be deprived of that thing that's otherwise common. And we don't see why anyone else is harmed by the fact of the garage being attached. That's the question, is who's harmed by the fact of the garage being attached? Now, I think of everyone here, I take all of our neighbors' concerns very seriously, and I know Manisha does as well. But obviously, the person who's most affected is Julie, because she's right next door, and we're putting the structure right next to her, again, as we're allowed to do. But I want to assure the board that whether it's attached or whether it's detached, you're still going to have the same concerns. And those are concerns that, because we're good neighbors, we've already been talking with Julie about the removal of a tree. And we'll work with her to make sure that we're addressing the other issues. The health of the other trees, we'll make sure that we don't have water issues. We had one of my kids pulled off the downspout on our gutter, and we didn't realize it. And we had water intrusion into our basement. And I know that that's something that you don't want to have in these old homes. But I can say to Julie that we're going to be working with engineers to make sure that we have a plan for the drainage of that garage. Whether it's attached or detached, we're going to have a plan for that drainage. And that's not what this variance is about. It's about whether it's attached or whether it's detached. I think Alexis, I don't know if she's still here, Alexis made a great point about the height of the garage. And I think Mike spoke to it, that apparently we're only allowed 14 feet up to the plate, and right now we have 17. So that's one more change that would have to happen if it were detached. That would have to shrink down to 14 feet. That doesn't materially change our ability to build it. It just changes what that second story looks like. You're dealing with attic trusses rather than dealing with the hip roof that we have planned right now. I think Tina made some points that it seemed that a lot of her concerns have maybe been answered, things that she thought were the case that turned out not to be. Because in fact, that when you look at the attached garages in this 1 block radius, a majority of them are 2-car garages. Attached garages are common. A fourth of the homes in this neighborhood have them, and a majority of those attached garages are 2-car garages. That's reflected in our presentation, and I'm happy to send that to the board. I want to thank Jay for his kind words about this project and about our not desiring to interfere with our desires. I think Jay was concerned with just the bigness of the project. But again, big houses, there's many small houses in Fort Russell. There's many big ones too. Again, the Day Mansion, Tim Kincaid's place, is 10,000 square feet. That's 2 blocks away. The big house, there's ours. There's many big houses in Fort Russell along with the other ones, and it's not out of character to have those houses. I think Allison noted, she said that, you don't need an expansive addition to take care of a special needs child. And, I agree, we don't need a basement rec room to take care of a special needs child. But this is not about the basement rec room, which we're allowed to do either way. It's not about the expanded living room, which we can do either way. It's about the attached garage. And I'll tell you that, if this is the extent of our problems in the world, that we have to have a detached garage, thank God we're blessed. But I can say that our lives would be significantly easier caring for our child if we don't have to deal with that, especially during the winter months. My lovely wife has been suffering through Moscow winters for 8 years now, and I know she would love to have a roof over her head as she gets out of the car and won't have to scrape them anymore. That would be a welcome addition for all of us. And since it's common, since it's something that you see on a fourth of the corner lots in this area, there's no basis to deny it to us here. The last thing I'll say, maybe it's the last thing I'll say. Someone pointed out about the parking congestion caused by my lovely parents across the street at the big house. They're here tonight. My parents couldn't even be bothered to speak in support of their son. We're all deeply disappointed by this. But they've been causing parking congestion for everybody with their boarding house. They also won an Orchid Award for taking care of it. But we're going to alleviate that parking congestion by adding this 2-car garage. And a 1-car garage is not going to alleviate as much parking. That's what Professor Mead is proposing. He wants us to do a 1-car garage. He thinks that's going to be more straightforward. I think Brian mentioned that as well. And I think the fact is again, you know, when we have 2 cars and we don't know which one we're taking out on any given day, if it's the difficulty of getting the kid out in the morning is going to be you know, similar if we don't have the 2 cars. And since they are common and the majority of attached garages are 2-car garages in this neighborhood, we think there's no reason to deny it here. I think this is for real, the last thing I'll say, but I want to thank, I don't want to thank Chris, there he is. Kind words from Chris, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the sentiments of our neighbors. And the last thing I'll say, and if the board will forgive me for looking at our neighbors, is most of this opposition we learned about this morning. You know, we had 3 letters late last week, and then most of this hit us this morning. And we're not hard to find. We've been talking with Julie. We've been talking with others. Even other people who spoke out didn't let us know that they would be opposing. We're here. We're happy to answer questions. We're not trying to make anyone's life hard. And if there's something that we can do with the way we do this project that makes your life easier, we're happy to hear about it. But I would love to hear about it over a beer on the street, if that's allowed. I know it is, rather than at a Board of Adjustment hearing. So,
Beer would be bad here.
okay.
Okay, thank you very
Anything
much.
else? Any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Jim, can we take 5 minutes before we go into deliberations?
Okay, has there been a request that we temporarily, I guess I can use adjourn, we'll take a break for 5 minutes, but we will close out the public hearing.
May I
Go ahead.
request one more thing?
Go ahead.
Mike, can we have the slides added to the record, as part of the record?
Yours?
Yes.
They will be.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So we're closing the public record at this stage. We'll take a 5-minute break, but I do want to thank everybody for their civility tonight so far, and I'm sure that'll be the case. Very much appreciate that. So we will be back here at 5 minutes to 9.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, the board will deliberate. Again, the public portion of this is over. We will deliberate of all of the information we've heard, been presented to us, and amongst ourselves, and see if that leads to a motion. So who would like to make some comments first, or observations, or whatever pleases the board?
Tim, I'll start.
Okay.
I'm going to oppose it from the question I asked at the very beginning. You can change, on a developed piece of property, you can change the front door if you have the space. You can't change the front door if you have to ask for a variance. So to me, I'm going to say no. And that's where it pretty much stopped for me. I think the plan's great. It's beautiful. Do I think I would want to live in it? No. It looks something like a museum, but, you know, the nice thing about Moscow is we don't have design review. And every time we've ever talked about design review, we get shot out the door. So if you want to have that discussion about design review, please attend a planning and zoning meeting, and I'm sure they would love to discuss that with you. Or the city council election, that's also a good place, but that's like the third rail, don't grab Social Security. And then, so that's kind of where I am. I'm going to stop right there, because
Okay.
everything else to me, once it said, no, you can't do it because you have to ask for a variance, that's a done deal for me, because to me, making a variance because you want to, not because you have to.
Good
So,
point. I
there you
think that's
go.
a good point. Okay. Steve or Ivy?
Well, again, the proposal is to allow a 3-foot variance for a 20-foot setback requirement. And so we're talking about a 3-foot variance, changing the backyard, the designated backyard. They still don't have the 20-foot setback that they're requiring. So that's why we're here with the 3-foot variance. And they wanted to facilitate the north side of the lot rather than, and accommodate the construction of a 2-car garage, a 2-car garage facing the south side of the lot. But in the application, besides the 3-foot variance and the construction of a 2-car garage, the proposal is for 3,300 square feet. The proposed addition includes a rec room, a 2-car garage, a mud room, a study, a dining area, storage area, bonus room above the garage, and a small increase in the kitchen area. And again, when I look at the height of the garage plus the second story, which is right at 5 feet next to the person's yard, 5 feet away from the lot line, it says that it can't be more than 14 foot. They've got 17 and a half feet here, and that just takes you to the eave, but it doesn't take into account that the fact of the back of the house has the whole basement exposed as well, all the way up to that 17-foot plus the roof of the garage. And so, you know, it's to me, that whole west line is so problematic, and what we're talking about there is the 5 foot on the west line. But in order to get there, in order to be there, you have to get that 3-foot variance on the north side, because they're required to have 20-foot setback. Determining that now, they want that to be taking an existing home and saying, well, we want to now put the backyard on the north side rather than on the west side, and so they don't meet that 3-foot criteria. But the addition seems to be could be curtailed. Could be less invasive to the neighbor to their west, and so I think they could come up with a plan that would work, and that everybody would be happy with, is my thought.
Ivy, do you have anything to say?
Strictly speaking, just going back to the relevant criteria and standards, I just kind of felt there were problems with each of them. The first, you know, the applicant is supposed to demonstrate that special conditions and/or circumstances exist which are peculiar to the property, such as size, shape, topography, or location. I think this property is on par with the lot is comparable to others in the neighborhood. It, in fact, is larger than many others in the neighborhood. And I don't see, I guess I'm not convinced that there's anything particularly peculiar about the lot, about the topography of the lot, the size of the lot, the shape of the lot, that would, I guess, justify a variance. Also, the hardship, just because you want something doesn't mean that there's a hardship. I guess I was also not convinced about the hardship factor. I, think that there's plenty of things that can be done on the lot within the constraints of the lot. In fact, these owners bought this house on this lot because of its character, probably in part because of the setback. It has a grand front yard. I drove by it yesterday just so I could see exactly, visualize this whole thing in my mind. It's a beautiful home, but I'm just not convinced that there's a hardship there. It's, the owners bought this home for this house, for its historic character, for the way it looks. Just because you want something, that's not justification to me of a hardship. And, we also heard lots of testimony tonight about all the reasons why this proposed variance is not in the public interest of the neighborhood. So I guess I just am not convinced about any of the relevant criteria and standards.
Go on.
Let me add that he made a reference, the owner made a reference to Tim Kincaid's property, which is a beautiful home. It's an older home. They haven't tried to make a big addition on that home, new addition to that home at all. And there are a lot of double two-car garages around, apparently, by showing the photos of them, but I can't believe that they have upper levels of the significance that this one is proposed for. And then I think, just thinking through what I've heard with testimony, a single-car garage would allow you to stay away from that 5-foot setback, but a single-car garage could also provide them with the ability to go in and out of the house without having to go outside and get into a car that could be used and not have to deal with the 5-foot setback that we're struggling with along that west side. And I don't know if that would then require them not to even have to designate what side is the north side, or so I
think the exact point is that all of the things the owner wants, the owner could have within the constraints of what's allowable. It's just that they want more than that. So, and I don't think that wanting more than what the lot will allow constitutes a hardship. I think that there's locations, new builds, there's opportunities to have everything want on other properties in town, if that's what you want. It's just within the constraints of a historic neighborhood with a lot of historic homes, and, the house is already in existence. You either tear the house down and start over and build it exactly how you want it and don't worry about setbacks, or you stick to what's allowed.
I tend to agree with mostly everything that was said here. I don't believe, first of all, I understand the frustration that the applicant feels about this. It feels like it's only an issue between an attached or detached garage. But the fact is, he requested a variance, and that requires us to look at the 3 criteria, and that is the standards that we have to hold ourselves accountable to. I don't feel that this particular lot deserves any special conditions. I think it's typical of that in the neighborhood, both in size, shape, and topography. And therefore, I don't believe that it would be a hardship based on that particular fact that there is not a special condition. I guess the criteria that I've focused in mostly on, and that is there a conflict with the public interest? And I think it's pretty apparent tonight that we heard, or we have letters from 16 people in the neighborhood in opposition to this particular project, and nobody in favor of it. And so I think that, to me, tells me that there is obviously a conflict with public interest with this project. And you could maybe argue the first two criteria one way or the other, but certainly the third one's pretty clear to me. There's talk about precedent and the fact that some neighbors have a one-car garage, some of them have a two-car, some of them are detached. I don't know if that's really relevant because I can't find out right now who did it legally, who didn't do it legally. And as far as that setting a precedent, that's beyond our ability to really verify. So I focus in mostly on the public interest, and what we've heard today was a lot of things. It changes the character of the neighborhood. It's out of scope with the neighborhood. It would be a set of poor precedents for the future, and those were iterated a couple different times. Is there any further comments, or is there a motion from the board?
Tim?
Yes, Jerry.
I move that we deny the variance and direct staff to develop the relevant standards and criteria, however that is, CRSs, or, and then bring it to us for our next meeting for approval.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the variance application be denied and that the staff be directed to develop relevant criteria and standards based on our board's decision. Is there any further discussion? Okay, voting right to left?
Aye.
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 Okay. The motion passes that it is rejected, the variance is rejected, and that the staff is directed to provide the relevant criteria and standards. Thank you very much for your time, and again, your civility tonight, and your ability to speak frankly, and is there a movement for adjourn?
Well, do we have any other, anything
Any
else
other
coming?
staff comments or questions?
Anything coming up?
We're meeting again on next Tuesday at 5:30 to sign the documents.
5:30 up here.
Okay. Any other
admin issues from the staff?
No.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Your
I'll
turn,
second.
Ivy. There's a movement to adjourn, and it's been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay.